Hey everyone, wanted to hit on what is money velocity. So talked about it a little bit previous couple of videos, but basically, what money velocity is the measure of how fast a dollar moves in the economy, or said another way, how many goods and services are being purchased and consumed with any given unit of measure. Could be coin, could be a dollar, could be check or something like that. If you hop over to the St. Louis Fed here. It's a really interesting website. You can get a lot of interesting data. But what this is showing us is since the 60s, we are at an all-time low of money velocity as of right now. So starting in 1960, you had two, ramped up in the 80s, boom. And then since then, it's been on a steady decline. We've had a couple of periods of growth, but really the trend is negative. And what that suggests to me is that people in general are going to stop consuming as what as one as they once did. That mentality of just ubiquitous consumption can't it's not sustainable. People have to have efficient consumption. You have to understand how you think, move, what you need to do any given task. How do you consume in an appropriate way the things that are around you and the things that are made. And I myself am guilty of it. Do you need 10 pairs of shoes? No. Shoes are cool, yes, and there's nothing wrong with owning them. But I think the utility of those pairs of shoes drop drastically. You'll some of the more forward-thinking billionaires, I think, have started to see this. That the stuff, to quote Tyler Durden, the stuff you own ends up owning you. And so Elon Musk recently is going sort of a hermit crab lifestyle, a monk lifestyle. He's going to sell everything he's ever had because he realizes those things are a distraction from his goal. Now that's nice for him. He has a lot of stuff. But for the average person, when you just need a house to live in, for example, it's a different proposition. So a couple of things I wanted to hit was the velocity of money measures economic activity. The higher that number, the more activity there is. The lower the number, the lower the activity. But essentially what it tells you is I think the economy is slowing down, and it's been on that trend since really the 80s. The fact that real wages aren't growing, costs of things are increasing. We'll get into that in another video. I think force people to realize that okay, if I can't go and just earn a living any old way, it becomes very difficult in order to produce an income that can consume at the same rate at which people once consumed, and that is what I think is under an enormous. Is what is under enormous pressure. The more you the more you spend your time consuming, and the less you spend your time producing, it puts pressure on this ratio, on this problem. If everybody starts to switch to being a consumer from producer, you should theoretically see a jump in money velocity. However, the problem with that is if fewer people produce that thing, as a person switches from a net producer to a net consumer, that really puts pressure on this model and this understanding that you can continue to consume at the same rate. I've seen it with my wife and I. We are right now in the middle of COVID, and our spending habits have changed tremendously. Now, some of that has been brought on by external forces, of course. You couldn't go anywhere. But we've been talking about it recently, and there's no way we're going to go back to the way we were consuming and the way we were spending our income. It doesn't even make any sense when you start to put it into perspective. These little trinkets you buy, they're nice. Could be go to a nice dinner. It could be having a cool computer, a really nice car, a couple of extra pairs of tennis shoes or whatever. But when put into an eternal perspective, it really does diminish the the call of the luxuries that people have, people and that people desire. You stop thinking, okay, I need that next thing, and you start to think, okay, well, if I know this doesn't mean anything, and I know that at the end of the day I could just drop this, then what value does that thing really have? I remember when we were in Hurricane Harvey here in Houston, my wife and I looked at each other at one point and we said, hey, listen, we might lose everything in the apartment. We were on a first floor apartment, and it was getting close to flooding within like a foot. And I said, okay, well, what would you take? And she said, I just go get my ring. And I said, she asked me, what would you take? And I said, I would just go get my rifle. And that put into perspective what actually is important, ultimately important. And I think this time right now is a time of reflection. You can be used for a time of reflection, a time of meditation on how will you change your behavior going forward? How will you interact with people? How will you consume and spend your money? And I think the data is showing the overarching sentiment is the economy slowing and real community coming back. So yeah, interesting topic, and I'd love to hear what you guys have to think and have to say. We'll catch you on the next one.